The dust hung in the air like a veil of sorrow the morning Beatrice Vaughn stumbled on the wooden steps of the general store, her walking stick clattering to the ground as women whispered behind gloved hands and men looked away with pity etched into their sun-weathered faces. She was 22 years old, born blind into a world that valued sight above all else, and Cherry Creek, Nevada had long since decided her fate would be one of loneliness. The year was 1882, and in a territory where survival demanded keen eyes to spot danger on the horizon, a woman who could not see was considered little more than a burden to bear. Beatrice heard the whispers, of course. She always did. Her other senses had sharpened to compensate for her darkness, and she could hear the pitying sighs, the muttered words about how tragic it was that such a pretty girl would never find a husband, never have children, never know the life that other women took for granted. Her father had died 2 years prior in a mining accident, and her mother had followed him to the grave just 6 months ago, leaving Beatrice alone in a small house at the edge of town with only her late mother's meager savings and the charity of neighbors who felt obligated to help but secretly resented the burden. She bent down carefully, her fingers searching the dusty planks until they found her walking stick. As she straightened, she heard the approaching footsteps of Mrs. Henderson, the baker's wife, whose heavy perfume always announced her presence before her voice did. "Oh, Beatrice, dear, let me help you," Mrs. Henderson said, her tone dripping with that particular brand of sympathy that made Beatrice want to scream. "You really should not be out here alone. What if something happened to you? I am perfectly capable of managing, Mrs. Henderson," Beatrice replied, keeping her voice steady and polite. "I have been walking these streets my entire life. Yes, but still, a young woman in your condition, it is simply not safe." Mrs. Henderson lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I heard that the Johnson boy is looking for a wife. Perhaps if you were willing to help with his farm work, he might consider, well, you know, a marriage of convenience at least. It would give you security." Beatrice felt her jaw tighten. The Johnson boy was 17, barely old enough to shave, and she had no intention of being anyone's charitable project or unpaid farmhand. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Henderson, but I am managing just fine on my own." She heard the woman's disapproving sniff before the footsteps retreated. Beatrice stood there for a moment, feeling the warm Nevada sun on her face, listening to the sounds of the town around her. Horses whinnied at the hitching posts, wagon wheels creaked along the main street, and somewhere in the distance, a piano played a melancholy tune from inside the saloon. This was her world, mapped out in sounds and smells and the feel of the wind against her skin. She made her way into the general store, her stick tapping a familiar rhythm against the floorboards. She knew every inch of this place, knew that the fabric bolts were to her left, the food supplies straight ahead, and the hardware toward the back. Mr. Peterson, the store owner, greeted her with the same false cheer he always used. "Miss Vaughn, what can I do for you today?" "I need flour, sugar, coffee, and lamp oil," she said, reaching into her pocket for the coins she had carefully counted at home. She heard him moving around the store, gathering her items, and she waited patiently, used to the fact that most people seemed to move slower when helping her, as if she might break at any moment. The door opened behind her, and she heard new footsteps enter. These were different from the usual townspeople, heavier, more deliberate, with the distinct jingle of spurs that marked a man who spent most of his time on horseback. She heard Mr. Peterson's voice change, becoming more cautious. "Help you, stranger." "Just passing through," a deep voice replied, rough and weathered like old leather. "Need supplies for a few more days on the trail. Heading north toward Virginia City." Beatrice listened as the man moved through the store, his presence somehow different from the other men in town. There was no hurry in his movements, no impatience. She heard him stop somewhere near her, probably looking at the canned goods on the shelf beside where she stood. "Pardon me, miss," the man said, and she turned her face in his direction, aware as always of how people reacted when they realized she could not see them. There was usually a pause, a moment of uncomfortable recognition. This man's voice held no pity when he spoke again. "I did not mean to crowd you. I will wait until you are finished." "You are not crowding me," Beatrice said, surprised by his courtesy. "I am simply waiting for Mr. Peterson to gather my items." "Take your time," the stranger said. She heard him move away slightly, giving her space, and she found herself curious about this man who treated her like any other person, not a fragile creature to be pitied. Mr. Peterson returned with her supplies, and she paid him, carefully accepting the wrapped parcels. She had done this countless times, had learned to manage on her own despite what everyone in Cherry Creek seemed to think. But the parcels were heavy today, and she struggled slightly to balance them with her walking stick. "Let me help you with those," the stranger said, and before she could protest, she felt him gently take the parcels from her arms. "Where are you headed?" "I can manage," Beatrice said automatically, but he was already moving toward the door. "I am sure you can," he replied, his tone matter-of-fact rather than patronizing. "But I am headed outside anyway, and these parcels look heavy. No sense in you struggling when I have got two free hands." Beatrice hesitated, then followed him out, her stick tapping the familiar path. Once outside, she stopped, expecting him to hand her the parcels and be on his way. "Which direction is home?" he asked instead. "That way," she gestured with her stick toward the east end of town. "But truly, I can carry them from here." "How about this?" the stranger said, and she could hear something like amusement in his voice. "I will walk alongside you, carry these heavy parcels, and you can tell me if I am headed the right way. That seems like a fair trade." Despite herself, Beatrice felt a small smile tug at her lips. "You are very persistent, Mr. Garrett," he said. "Blake Garrett. And you would be Beatrice Vaughn." They started walking, and Beatrice found herself acutely aware of his presence beside her. He was tall, she could tell from the angle of his voice, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. He did not try to guide her or grab her arm, did not hover or fuss. He simply walked beside her, carrying her parcels as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "You are new to Cherry Creek," Beatrice said. It was not a question. "Just passing through," Blake confirmed. "Been working cattle drives up from Texas, heading north for the winter to find work at one of the mining operations. Heard Virginia City was hiring. It is a long journey. I have made longer." There was a pause, and then he said, "You know this town well." "I should hope so. I have lived here my entire life. Yet people treat you like you are made of glass." Beatrice stopped walking, surprised by his directness. "You notice that?" "Hard not to," Blake said, stopping beside her. "Back in the store, the way that shopkeeper talked to you like you were a child. The way folks on the street are staring at us right now, probably wondering why a stranger is walking with you, probably thinking they need to protect you from me or some such nonsense." "You are very observant, Mr. Garrett." "I see enough," he said simply. "And I see a woman who knows her way around her own town, who manages just fine on her own, but who everyone treats like she is helpless." Beatrice felt something shift in her chest, a strange warmth that had nothing to do with the Nevada sun. Most people mean well. Meaning well and being helpful are not always the same thing. They started walking again, and Beatrice found herself wanting to know more about this stranger who saw her differently than everyone else in Cherry Creek. "What made you become a cowboy, Mr. Garrett?" "Blake," he corrected. And I suppose I became one because it was honest work that did not require me to answer to anyone. My father was a rancher down in Texas, died when I was young. My mother remarried, but her new husband and I did not see eye to eye. So I left when I was 18, been working cattle drives and ranch work ever since. That was about 10 years ago now. You must have seen a lot of the country. More dust and heat than I care to remember, Blake said with what sounded like a smile in his voice. But yeah, I have seen my share. Mountains and deserts, big cities and tiny towns. Good people and bad people. Mostly just people trying to get by, same as anywhere. They reached Beatrice's house, a modest wooden structure that needed paint and some repairs, but was still standing solid. She turned to face where she judged Blake to be standing. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Garrett. I mean Blake." She heard him climb the 2 steps to her porch and set the parcels down by her door. "You are welcome, Beatrice." The way he said her name, without pity or condescension, made her heart beat a little faster. She heard him descend the steps, heard the jingle of his spurs as he prepared to leave. "Blake," she called out, surprising herself. "Yes." "If you are still in town tomorrow, there is a church social in the evening. Everyone is welcome." She did not know what made her say it, only that she did not want this to be the last time she spoke to him. There was a long pause, and Beatrice felt her cheeks flush, suddenly embarrassed. Of course he would not want to attend some small-town social. He was just passing through, had his own plans and his own life. "What time?" Blake asked. 6 o'clock, at the church on Main Street." "I will be there," he said, and she heard the smile in his voice again. "Thank you for the invitation, Beatrice." She listened to his footsteps fade away, her heart doing strange things in her chest. She had not felt this way in. Well, she had never felt this way. Men in Cherry Creek either ignored her completely or treated her with suffocating pity. Blake Garrett had done neither. He had simply treated her like a person, like someone worth talking to, worth listening to. That night, as Beatrice lay in bed, she found herself thinking about Blake's voice, the way he moved, the respect in his tone. She thought about his words, "I see enough." What had he meant by that? But more importantly, why had he treated her so differently than everyone else? The next morning, Beatrice woke with a strange mix of anticipation and nervousness. She went through her daily routine, the same tasks she had performed countless times, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. She chose her best dress, a deep blue cotton that her mother had always said brought out the color of her eyes, though Beatrice herself had no idea what color her eyes were beyond what others had told her. The day passed slowly. She did her chores, prepared a simple lunch, and tried not to think too much about whether Blake would actually come to the social. He was a drifter, after all, a cowboy passing through. He probably said things like that to women in every town, made promises he had no intention of keeping. But when evening came and her neighbor, Mrs. Sullivan, knocked on her door to walk with her to the church, Beatrice found herself hoping against hope that she had been wrong about him. The church social was already in full swing when they arrived. Beatrice could hear the cheerful chatter of voices, the laughter of children running around the churchyard, the scrape of fiddles tuning up for dancing. Mrs. Sullivan guided her to a chair, then immediately wandered off to gossip with her friends, leaving Beatrice sitting alone as usual. She could feel the familiar isolation settling over her, the sense of being present but not really part of things. People would nod to her, say a polite word or two, but no one really talked to her, really saw her as someone they might want to spend time with. She was the blind girl, the object of pity, the one everyone felt sorry for but no one really wanted to be around. "Evening, Beatrice." His voice cut through her thoughts, and she turned her face toward Blake, her heart leaping. He had come. Blake, she said, unable to keep the surprise and pleasure out of her voice. You came, said I would, he replied simply. She heard him settle into the chair beside her. Nice gathering. Looks like the whole town is here. Most people come to these socials. It is not as though there is much else to do for entertainment in Cherry Creek. Fair point. There was a pause, and then Blake said, Would you like to take a walk? It is a nice evening, and it is a bit crowded in here. Beatrice felt her pulse quicken. Around them, conversations had quieted slightly, and she knew people were watching, wondering about the stranger sitting with the blind girl. I would like that very much. Blake stood, and she heard him extend his arm. May I? She rose and took his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath her fingers. They walked away from the crowd, and Beatrice heard the whispers starting behind them, but for once she did not care what the town thought. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, leaving the noise of the social behind. Blake guided her without being overbearing, simply providing a steady presence at her side. The evening air was cooler now, pleasant after the heat of the day, and Beatrice could smell sagebrush and dust and something else, something that might have been leather and horse, and the particular scent of the man beside her. Tell me something, Blake said eventually. What do you do with your time? Besides listening to people whisper about you and tell you that you cannot manage on your own. Beatrice laughed, surprised by his bluntness. I do quite a lot, actually. I cook, clean, mend clothes. I can navigate Cherry Creek blindfolded, which I suppose is appropriate. I used to help my mother with her sewing business before she died. I cannot see to sew fine work, but I can do basic mending by touch, and I was good at organizing her supplies, keeping track of orders and accounts. So you are good with numbers. I have always had a head for them. My father taught me when I was young. He said sight had nothing to do with arithmetic. Smart man, Blake said. What else? What do you mean? What else do you do? What do you enjoy? No one had ever asked her that before. Beatrice thought for a moment. I love music. I can hear the piano from the saloon sometimes, late at night when the town is quiet, and I love listening to people's voices, learning about them from the way they speak. I can tell a lot about a person from their voice. What can you tell about me? Blake asked, and she heard genuine curiosity in the question. You are older than me, but not by much. Maybe late 20s, early 30s. You have spent most of your life outdoors, working with your hands. You are from somewhere south, Texas most likely, though you have traveled enough that your accent is not as strong as it probably once was. You are. She hesitated. I am what? Lonely, Beatrice said softly. You are lonely, but you have grown so used to it that you do not even notice anymore. There was a long silence, and Beatrice, worried she had overstepped, said too much. But then Blake spoke, his voice quiet and thoughtful. You are right on all counts. I am 28 years old, been on my own since I was 18. And yes, I suppose I am lonely, though I have never really thought about it that way. It is just the way things are. I understand that feeling, Beatrice said. Being lonely even when you are surrounded by people, maybe especially when you are surrounded by people who do not really see you. Except I see you, Beatrice, Blake said, and there was something in his voice that made her breath catch. Maybe not with my eyes the way you mean, but I see you. I see a strong woman who has had to fight for every bit of independence she has, who refuses to let the world define her by what she cannot do. I see someone worth knowing. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. She had never heard anyone speak to her this way, never had anyone look past her blindness to see the person underneath. Why? She whispered. Why are you different? Why do you not pity me like everyone else? Blake was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I spent 10 years drifting from place to place, never putting down roots, never letting anyone get close. You know why? Because I was tired of people making assumptions about me. Cowboy, drifter, ranch hand, whatever they wanted to call me. They saw the hat and the spurs and the dust on my clothes, and they thought they knew everything about me. They never bothered to look deeper. He paused, and Beatrice felt him shift slightly beside her. I suppose when I met you, when I saw how this town treats you, I recognized something familiar. People making assumptions, putting you in a box, deciding who you are without ever really getting to know you. And I thought, that is not right. That is not fair. So I decided to do what I wish more people would do for me. I decided to actually see you, not just your blindness. Blake, Beatrice breathed, her heart full of emotions she could not quite name. Besides, he added, his tone lightening slightly, I figure I see enough for two. So what does it matter if you cannot see? Between us, we have got everything covered. Beatrice laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that felt like freedom. I see enough for two, she repeated. I like that. They continued walking, talking about everything and nothing. Blake told her about his travels, about the vast open plains of Texas and the rugged mountains of Colorado, about cattle drives and wild storms and the endless sky. Beatrice told him about Cherry Creek, about growing up blind in a sighted world, about her parents and her dreams and the small rebellions that made up her daily life. Time slipped away, and it was full dark by the time they made their way back to the church. The social was winding down, and Beatrice could feel the curious stares as Blake walked her home. She knew there would be talk tomorrow, knew that the town would have plenty to say about the blind girl and the drifting cowboy. But for once, she did not care. At her door, Blake hesitated. Beatrice, I need to be honest with you. I was planning to leave tomorrow, head north to Virginia City like I said, but, Beatrice prompted, her heart hammering. But I find myself not wanting to leave just yet. Would it be all right if I stayed in Cherry Creek for a while longer? I could find work at one of the ranches outside town, maybe the mining operation up in the hills. I would like to spend more time with you if you would like that too. I would like that very much, Beatrice said, unable to keep the smile from her face. Then I will see you tomorrow, Blake said. Good night, Beatrice. Good night, Blake. She heard him walk away, his spurs jingling in the quiet night, and she stood on her porch for a long moment, her hand pressed to her chest, feeling her heart race with something that felt dangerously like hope. The next morning, news had already spread through Cherry Creek that the blind Vaughn girl had spent the evening walking with the stranger. Beatrice heard the whispers when she ventured out to the well for water, heard the speculation and the warnings and the predictions that she was setting herself up for heartbreak. Mrs. Henderson cornered her outside the general store. Beatrice, dear, I feel I must speak plainly. This man, this Blake Garrett, he is a drifter. You do realize that, do not you? Men like that do not settle down, they do not marry. And even if he was looking to marry, surely he would want. Want what? Beatrice asked, her voice cold. A wife who can see, a woman who is not a burden. Well, I did not mean. Mrs. Henderson sputtered. Yes, you did, Beatrice said. You meant exactly that. And you know what, Mrs. Henderson? Blake does not see me as a burden, he sees me as a person, which is more than I can say for most people in this town. She walked away, leaving the older woman speechless, and she felt a fierce pride in standing up for herself, for Blake, for the possibility of something real and genuine in her life. Blake found her later that afternoon. She was sitting on her porch, mending a shirt by touch, her fingers moving surely over the fabric. She heard him approach, recognized his footstep now, the particular rhythm of his walk. Heard you gave Mrs. Henderson quite the speech this morning, he said, amusement clear in his voice. News travels fast in a small town, Beatrice replied. I hope I did not cause you any trouble. Trouble? Blake climbed the steps and sat down beside her. Beatrice, I have been in more trouble than you can imagine. A little gossip does not bother me, but I am curious, what did Mrs. Henderson say to you? Beatrice told him, her fingers still working the needle through the fabric. When she finished, Blake was quiet for a long moment. I got work at the Silver Creek Ranch, he said finally. It is about 5 miles outside town, but I can ride in most evenings. The foreman said they need an extra hand through the winter, maybe longer if things work out. So I will be around for a while if that is all right with you. It is more than all right, Beatrice said softly. Over the following weeks, Blake became a fixture in Beatrice's life. He rode into town nearly every evening, and they would walk together, talking about everything under the sun. He told her about his work at the ranch, about the horses he was training, about the land, and the cattle, and the men he worked with. She told him about her days, about the small victories and frustrations of managing on her own, about her dreams of doing something more than just surviving. Blake never treated her blindness as a limitation. When she mentioned wanting to learn more about the ranch, he described things to her in vivid detail, painting pictures with words that let her see through his eyes. When she expressed frustration at not being able to do certain tasks, he helped her figure out alternative methods, never doing things for her but working with her to find solutions. One evening in late October, Blake arrived with something jingling in his hand. "I've got something for you," he said, pressing a small object into her palm. Beatrice's fingers explored it. It was a small bell, bright and clear-toned when she shook it gently. "A bell for your walking stick," Blake explained. "I was thinking, you know the sounds of this town so well you navigate by listening. So I thought, what if other people could hear you coming too? Not because you need help, but so they know to get out of your way instead of you having to navigate around them." Beatrice felt tears sting her eyes. It was such a simple thing, but it showed how deeply Blake understood her. He was not trying to protect her or make her safer. He was giving her a tool to claim more space in the world, to make the world adjust to her rather than always having to adjust to it. "Blake, this is perfect," she whispered. "There is something else," he said, and she heard nervousness in his voice for the first time. "Beatrice, I know we have not known each other long, just over a month now, but I cannot stop thinking about you. You are the first person in 10 years who has made me want to stay in one place, who has made me think about a future that is more than just the next town, the next job." Beatrice's heart was pounding so hard she thought Blake must surely hear it. "I am not good with words," Blake continued. "I am just a cowboy who knows how to ride and rope and not much else. But I know how I feel when I am with you. I know that you make me want to be better, to do more, to build something real. And I know that I see enough for both of us if you will let me." "Blake," Beatrice said, her voice shaking. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you," Blake said simply. "I know it is fast, I know people will talk, I know there are 100 reasons why this is crazy, but I do not care about any of that. I love you, Beatrice Vaughn, and I want to spend my life with you if you will have me." Beatrice reached out, her hands finding Blake's face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his cheekbones, the roughness of several days' stubble. She felt him go still under her touch, barely breathing, waiting for her answer. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have loved you since that first day when you carried my parcels and treated me like I was just another person. I have loved you every day since, every moment we have spent together. Yes, Blake. Yes to everything." She felt him smile under her fingers, and then his hands were cupping her face, tilting it up, and his lips were on hers, gentle and warm and full of promise. It was Beatrice's first kiss, and it felt like coming home, like finding a place she belonged after a lifetime of being adrift. When they finally pulled apart, Blake kept his forehead pressed against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. I want to marry you properly, give you the life you deserve. I have some money saved up and the ranch job pays decent. We could fix up this house, make it truly ours. Or we could go somewhere else if you want, somewhere new where nobody knows us and nobody will judge. I do not want to leave Cherry Creek, Beatrice said. This is my home, for better or worse. These people may pity me, may think they know what is best for me, but I know this town. I know every street, every building, every sound. I do not want to start over somewhere new. Then we stay, Blake said firmly, and we show this town exactly what you are capable of, what we are capable of together. The engagement was met with predictable reactions. Some people were genuinely happy for Beatrice, seeing Blake's devotion and recognizing that she had found something real. But others were less supportive. They whispered that Blake was making a mistake, that he was too kind-hearted for his own good, that he would come to regret tying himself to a blind wife. Some even suggested that Beatrice was taking advantage of him, trapping a good man out of desperation. Blake heard these whispers and confronted them head-on. One evening at the saloon, when several ranch hands from a neighboring spread started making comments about his upcoming marriage, Blake set down his drink and faced them directly. "Let me make something clear," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "Beatrice is not a burden. She is not someone I am doing a favor for. She is the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I have ever met. She manages a household on her own, navigates this entire town without help, and has more courage in her little finger than most people have in their whole body. So if anyone has anything to say about my choice to marry her, you can say it to my face right now, and we can settle it however you want." The saloon remained silent. Nobody took him up on the challenge. The confrontation made its way back to Beatrice, as everything did in Cherry Creek. When Blake visited her that evening, she was waiting on the porch. "You did not have to defend me," she said, though her voice was warm with gratitude. "Yes, I did," Blake replied. "I will not stand by and let people talk about you that way, about us that way. You are going to have a hard time of it, you know," Beatrice said quietly, "being married to me. People will always question your choice. They will always think you made a sacrifice, that you settled for less than you could have had." Blake sat down beside her and took her hand. "Beatrice, look at me, I mean, listen to me." He paused. "Actually, that is the point, is it not? You do not need to look at me to know that I mean every word I am about to say. I am not settling. I am not making a sacrifice. I am choosing you because you are who I want, blindness and all. Your blindness is part of you, but it is not all of you. It is not even the most interesting thing about you. You are funny and sharp-witted and stubborn as hell. You challenge me. You make me think about things differently. You make me want to be the man you see when you touch my face. That is why I am marrying you." Beatrice felt tears slip down her cheeks. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "I think I am the lucky one," Blake said softly. "I spent 10 years wandering, looking for something I could not name. Turns out I was looking for you." They were married in early December of 1882, in the same church where they had attended that first social together. It was a small ceremony, attended by those in town who genuinely wished them well and curious onlookers who wanted to see if the blind girl would actually manage to get married. Beatrice wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her. Mrs. Sullivan, who had been one of the few consistently kind neighbors, helped her get ready, weaving flowers into her hair and telling her she looked beautiful. "You do, you know, Mrs. Sullivan said as they prepared to leave for the church. "Beautiful. That young man of yours is going to be struck speechless when he sees you." Beatrice smiled, nervous and excited and full of hope. "I wish I could see him," she admitted. "I have touched his face 100 times, built a picture of him in my mind, but I wish I could see him with my eyes just once." "I will be your eyes today," Mrs. Sullivan promised. "I will describe everything to you." And she did, as Beatrice walked down the aisle on Mrs. Sullivan's arm. The older woman whispered a running commentary. "Blake is at the altar, and oh my dear, he looks like he might cry. He is wearing a new suit, black with a white shirt, and he has trimmed his beard. He cannot take his eyes off you. Now he is smiling, and I swear I have never seen a man look so happy. The preacher is smiling too. Everyone is smiling, Beatrice. This is a happy day." When Beatrice reached the altar, Blake took her hands in his. "You are beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher asked Blake if he took Beatrice to be his wife, his "I do" rang out clear and strong, no hesitation, no doubt. And when Beatrice said her own vows, promising to love and honor Blake for all her days, she meant every word with her whole heart. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. "Blake, you may kiss your bride." Blake's hands cupped Beatrice's face gently, and he kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. Around them, the small congregation applauded, and for once, the sound held genuine joy rather than pity. The reception was held in the church hall, and Blake stayed by Beatrice's side the entire time, describing the scene to her, making sure she felt included in every moment. He told her about the decorations, about who was dancing with whom, about the children sneaking extra pieces of cake. He made her laugh with his observations, made her feel like she was experiencing everything right along with everyone else. As the evening wore on and they prepared to leave for their home, Mrs. Henderson approached them. Beatrice tensed, expecting another warning or some backhanded comment about their marriage. "I was wrong about you, Mr. Garrett," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice subdued. "And I was wrong about what Beatrice needed. I can see that now. I hope you will both be very happy." It was as close to an apology as they were likely to get, and Blake accepted it graciously. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. We will be." Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Blake was gentle with Beatrice, understanding that she was nervous, that this was all new to her. He talked her through everything, describing what he was doing, making sure she was comfortable, putting her at ease with his patience and care. "I love you," he whispered against her skin. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you know that." "I already know," Beatrice replied, her fingers tangled in his hair. "I feel it in everything you do." Married life brought new rhythms and new joys. Blake continued working at the Silver Creek Ranch, but he also started taking on additional work closer to town, building up their savings. He fixed up their house, repairing the roof and the porch, painting the walls, making it into a real home. He described every change to Beatrice, let her run her hands over his handiwork, made sure she felt ownership of their space. Beatrice, in turn, threw herself into making their house a home. She had always been capable of cooking and cleaning, but now she did it with new purpose. She started taking and mending work again, building up a small business of her own. Blake helped her organize a system for keeping track of clients and payments, and word slowly spread that Mrs. Garrett did excellent work for fair prices. Some people were surprised that Blake let his blind wife work. Blake's response was always the same. She does not need my permission. She is her own person, and if she wants to work, that is her choice." Winter settled over Cherry Creek, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Blake made sure their home was well stocked with firewood and supplies. On the coldest nights, they would sit by the fire together, Blake reading aloud from the newspaper or from books he borrowed from the small town library, Beatrice listening and commenting, their legs tangled together under a warm quilt. "Read me that part again," Beatrice would say when something particularly interesting came up. The part about the railroad expansion. Blake would backtrack, and they would discuss it, Beatrice's quick mind grasping the implications faster than Blake sometimes. She had a way of seeing connections, of understanding how things related to each other that constantly impressed him. "You should have been a businesswoman," he told her one evening. "You have got a head for this kind of thing." "Women do not become businesswomen," Beatrice said practically. "Especially not blind women in small Nevada towns." "Maybe not yet," Blake said. "But who knows what the future holds?" Christmas came, their first as a married couple. Blake had saved up to buy Beatrice a beautiful music box that played a soft, sweet melody. When she opened it and heard the music, she started to cry. "My mother had one like this when I was little," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I do not know what happened to it after she died. I thought I would never hear that sound again." "I am sorry," Blake said, concerned. "I did not mean to make you sad." "I am not sad," Beatrice assured him, reaching for his hand. "These are happy tears. You gave me back a memory I thought I had lost. Thank you, Blake." For Blake, Beatrice had knitted a scarf, the stitches careful and even, the pattern one misses. Sullivan had taught her. It was dark blue, the color of the Nevada sky at dusk, and Blake wore it every day, even when it was not quite cold enough to need it. As winter gave way to spring, Beatrice realized something that filled her with both joy and terror. She was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses twice now, and her body felt different in subtle ways. She waited to tell Blake until she was certain, and even then, she was nervous about his reaction. Would he be happy? Would he worry about how she would manage caring for a child when she could not see? Would he think it was too much, too soon? She told him one evening in March after he had come home from work and they were eating dinner together. She had practiced the words a dozen times in her head, but they still came out awkward and uncertain. "Blake, I have something to tell you. I think I am going to have a baby." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then Blake's chair scraped back and he was beside her, his hands on her shoulders. "Beatrice, truly, we are going to have a child." "Yes," she whispered. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Blake's voice was thick with emotion. "Beatrice, I am more than happy, I am. I do not even have words for it. We are going to be parents. You are going to be a mother." "I am scared," Beatrice admitted. "How will I take care of a baby when I cannot see? What if I am not good enough? What if I fail?" "You are not going to fail," Blake said firmly. "You are the most capable person I know. Yes, being a mother will be hard. It is hard for everyone, blind or sighted. But you will figure it out the same way you have figured out everything else in your life. And I will be here every step of the way. We will do this together." His confidence bolstered her own. They told a few close friends, including Mrs. Sullivan, who was overjoyed at the news. The reaction in town was mixed, as always. Some people were genuinely happy for them. Others worried openly about how a blind woman could possibly care for an infant. "She will drop it," one woman predicted grimly. "Mark my words." When Blake heard about these comments, he was furious, but Beatrice stopped him from confronting anyone. "Let them talk," she said. "We will prove them wrong with our actions, not our words." As her pregnancy progressed, Beatrice refused to let it slow her down. She continued taking and mending work, continued managing her household, continued doing everything she had always done. Blake worried sometimes that she was overdoing it, but he also respected her need to prove to herself and to the town that she was capable. In late May, Blake came home with news. "I have been offered a permanent position at the ranch," he said. "Not just as a hand, but as a foreman. It is more money, better hours, and it means we would have long-term security." "Blake, that is wonderful," Beatrice exclaimed. "You must have impressed them." "I work hard," Blake said modestly. But the owner also mentioned that he respects a man who stands by his wife the way I stand by you. He said it shows character. So my blindness actually helped you get a promotion, Beatrice said with a laugh. That is a first. Summer arrived, hot and dry as always in Nevada. Beatrice was large with child now, moving more slowly but still determined to maintain her independence. She had developed a system for preparing the house for the baby's arrival, organizing everything by touch and location, creating a space where she would be able to care for her child safely. Mrs. Sullivan helped her make baby clothes and blankets, describing colors and patterns while Beatrice's hands did the work. Blake built a cradle, describing every step of the process to Beatrice, letting her feel the smooth wood, the careful joints, the love he had put into every inch of it. On a sweltering July evening, Beatrice's labor began. Blake fetched the midwife, Mrs. Dalton, a no-nonsense woman who had delivered most of the babies in Cherry Creek for the past 20 years. She examined Beatrice and declared that it would probably be a while yet. Blake refused to leave Beatrice's side, holding her hand through each contraction, talking to her, encouraging her, being exactly what she needed him to be. As the hours passed and the pain intensified, Beatrice clung to Blake's voice like a lifeline, letting it ground her, remind her that she was not alone. "You are doing so well," Blake kept saying. "You are so strong, just a little longer." Finally, in the early hours of the morning, their son was born. He came into the world screaming his displeasure at the transition, and Beatrice burst into tears at the sound. "Is he all right?" she asked frantically. "Is he healthy?" "He is perfect, Mrs. Dalton said, placing the baby in Beatrice's arms. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good strong lungs as you can hear." Beatrice's hands explored her son with wonder and awe. She traced his tiny face, his impossibly small fingers, the shape of his head. He was perfect, absolutely perfect, and he was hers. "Blake," she said, and she heard him move closer. "I am here," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Touch him," Beatrice said. "Tell me what he looks like." Blake's large, calloused hand gently stroked their son's head. "He has dark hair, lots of it. He has got your nose, I think, and maybe my chin. He is beautiful, Beatrice. He is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." They named him Benjamin after Blake's father. Ben Garrett came into the world on July 15, 1883, and from the moment of his birth, he was loved beyond measure. The first few weeks were exhausting. Ben was a hungry baby, waking every few hours to nurse, and Beatrice was constantly tired, but she refused to let anyone suggest she could not handle it. She learned her son's cries, could distinguish between hunger and discomfort, and the need for a diaper change. She learned the weight of him, the feel of him, could tell at a touch if something was wrong. Blake helped as much as he could, changing diapers and walking a fussy Ben around the house at night so Beatrice could sleep. He would describe their son to her constantly, narrating Ben's expressions and movements, painting pictures with words so Beatrice could see her child growing and changing. "He smiled today," Blake would report. "A real smile, not just gas. He was looking right at me and he smiled." "What does it look like when he smiles?" Beatrice would ask, hungry for every detail. "His whole face lights up," Blake would say. "His eyes crinkle at the corners, and he has got this one dimple in his left cheek. It is the sweetest thing you ever saw." As Ben grew, Beatrice proved all the doubters wrong. She was a careful, attentive mother who knew her son's needs sometimes before he did. She baby-proofed their small house with Blake's help, creating a safe environment where Ben could eventually explore. She nursed him, bathed him, changed him, soothed him when he cried, all without sight but with an abundance of love and capability. When Ben was 3 months old, Mrs. Henderson came to visit, ostensibly to bring a baby gift but really to see for herself how Beatrice was managing. She found Beatrice rocking Ben in the chair Blake had made, singing softly to him, the picture of maternal competence. "He is a beautiful baby," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice subdued. "Thank you," Beatrice replied politely. "I must admit I did not think. That is, I worried." Mrs. Henderson trailed off. "You worried that I would not be able to care for him," Beatrice finished for her. "That is all right, Mrs. Henderson. Many people did. But as you can see, Ben is healthy and happy and well cared for. Blake and I are managing just fine." "Yes," Mrs. Henderson said quietly. "I can see that. I am sorry, Beatrice, for doubting you. You have proven to be an excellent mother." It was the first genuine apology Mrs. Henderson had ever given her, and Beatrice accepted it graciously. "Thank you. That means a great deal to me." Ben grew and thrived. He was a happy baby, quick to smile, curious about everything. As he got older and more mobile, Beatrice developed strategies for keeping track of him. She put bells on his clothes so she could hear where he was. She taught him from a very young age to respond to her voice, to come when called. She created a safe play area where he could explore without danger. Blake marveled at her ingenuity, at the way she adapted to each new stage of Ben's development. When Ben started crawling at 6 months, Beatrice learned the sound of his movements, could track him around the house by the patter of his hands and knees on the floor. When he started pulling himself up at 9 months, she made sure every sharp corner was padded, every dangerous object out of reach. "You are amazing," Blake told her one evening, watching as she navigated the house with Ben on her hip, completely confident in her movements. "You make it look easy." "It is not easy," Beatrice admitted, "but it is worth it. He is worth every moment of effort." Ben's first birthday was a joyful occasion. They invited friends over for cake, and Ben delighted everyone by smashing his piece enthusiastically, getting frosting all over his face and hands. Beatrice laughed at Blake's description of the mess, then carefully cleaned her son up, her hands gentle but thorough. As Ben grew into a toddler, he became Beatrice's eyes in ways neither of them had anticipated. He learned early that his mother could not see, and with the uncomplicated acceptance of childhood, he adapted to it. He would bring her things, would tell her in his limited vocabulary when something was wrong. "Mama, flower," he would say, pressing a dandelion into her hand. "Thank you, sweetheart," Beatrice would reply, feeling the soft petals, smelling the green scent. "What color is it?" "Yellow," Ben would say proudly, and Beatrice would smile, filing away another piece of information about the world she could not see. Blake watched his wife and son together with a fullness in his heart he had never known was possible. This was what he had been searching for all those years of drifting, this sense of home, of family, of belonging. Beatrice had given him that, just as he had given her the chance to prove to herself and the world what she was capable of. In the spring of 1885, when Ben was almost 2, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. She told Blake over dinner, nervous about his reaction. They had not planned for a second child so soon, and she worried about how she would manage 2 children, but Blake's reaction was immediate and joyful. "Another baby. Beatrice, that is wonderful. Ben will have a brother or sister. He will love that. You do not think it is too soon?" Beatrice asked. "There is no such thing as too soon for joy," Blake said firmly. "We will manage just like we have managed everything else, together." This second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Beatrice knew what to expect. She continued caring for Ben, continued taking in mending work, continued living her life with the same determination she always had. The town had long since stopped questioning her capability. If anything, Beatrice had become something of an inspiration, proof that blindness did not have to be a limitation. Their daughter was born in November, on a cold, clear night when the stars were bright above Cherry Creek. The labor was faster this time, and by dawn, Beatrice was holding a tiny, perfect baby girl. "She looks just like you," Blake said in wonder, touching his daughter's face with one gentle finger. "Same nose, same chin, same beautiful face." They named her Bonnie after Beatrice's mother. Bonnie Garrett was smaller than Ben had been, more delicate, but just as healthy and just as loved. Ben was fascinated by his baby sister. He would stand by her cradle for long minutes just watching her, and when she cried, he would run to get Beatrice. "Mama, baby crying," he would announce urgently. "I hear her, sweet boy," Beatrice would say. "Thank you for telling me." The house was fuller now, louder, more chaotic, but also more full of love than ever. Blake's work at the ranch was going well, and they were financially stable for the first time in both their lives. They had enough to live comfortably, to save a little, to provide for their growing family. As the children grew, they learned to be Beatrice's helpers. Ben, at 3 years old, would describe things to his mother the way Blake did. "Bonnie has a red dress, Mama, red like apples." It was simplified, childish, but it helped, and Beatrice treasured every word. Blake still came home every evening, still read to Beatrice, still made sure she knew she was seen and valued. Their love had only deepened over the years, growing stronger with each challenge they faced together. One evening, when Ben was 4 and Bonnie was 2, Blake came home with an announcement. "The ranch owner is retiring," he said. "He wants to sell the place, and he offered it to me first. Says I have been the best foreman he has ever had, and he would rather see the ranch go to someone who will care for it rather than some stranger looking to turn a quick profit." Beatrice's hands stilled on the shirt she was mending. "Blake, that is a ranch. That is a huge responsibility." "I know," Blake said. "And I told him I needed to talk to you first. It would mean a big change for us. We would have to take out a loan to buy it, which means years of hard work and risk. But it would be ours, Beatrice. Our own land, our own business, something to pass down to Ben and Bonnie someday." "Can we afford it?" Beatrice asked practically. "Barely," Blake admitted. "We would have to be careful with money for a long time. And I would need your help managing the business side of things, the accounts and records. You are better with numbers than I am." Beatrice thought about it carefully. A ranch. Their own land. Security for their children's future. It was risky, but it was also an opportunity. "I think we should do it," she said finally. "I think we should take the risk." Blake let out a breath he seemed to have been holding. "You are sure, I am sure. We have faced everything else together. We can face this too." They bought the Silver Creek Ranch in the spring of 1886. It was a smaller operation, just a few hundred acres and a couple dozen head of cattle, but it was theirs. Blake threw himself into the work with renewed energy, determined to make the ranch succeed. Beatrice took over the account books, managing their finances with the same meticulous care she brought to everything else. Mrs. Sullivan came out to visit once they were settled. She found Beatrice in the ranch house, nursing Bonnie while simultaneously checking over a ledger that Blake had transcribed into raised dots, a system they had developed together so Beatrice could read it by touch. "Beatrice Garrett," Mrs. Sullivan said with wonder, "you never cease to amaze me. You are running a ranch while raising 2 children, and you make it look easy." "It is not easy," Beatrice said with a laugh. "But Blake and I make a good team. He is my eyes and I am his. Well, I suppose I am his common sense sometimes. He gets so caught up in the work that he forgets to keep track of expenses." "You are both remarkable," Mrs. Sullivan said. "When I think about how this town used to pity you, used to think you would never have a life of your own. And now look at you. You have a husband who adores you, 2 beautiful children and a ranch. You have built an entire life." "I had help," Beatrice said softly. "Blake saw me when no one else did. He believed in me when I barely believed in myself. I could not have done any of this without him." But Blake would have said the same about her. She had given him a home, a family, a reason to stop drifting and put down roots. She had shown him that real love was not about perfect circumstances or easy choices. It was about choosing each other every day and building something beautiful together. The ranch thrived under their joint management. Blake worked the cattle and the land, made improvements to the property, hired a couple of hands to help during the busiest seasons. Beatrice managed the money, tracked expenses and income, kept them financially stable even in lean times. Together, they made it work. Ben and Bonnie grew up on the ranch, learning early to ride horses and help with chores. Ben, as the oldest, took his responsibilities seriously, and by the time he was 7, he was a real help to Blake with the cattle. Bonnie was more interested in the horses, and she spent hours in the barn talking to them, learning to groom them under Blake's watchful eye. Both children adored their mother and never saw her blindness as a weakness. To them, it was simply part of who she was, like Blake's calloused hands or their own freckles. They learned to describe things to her naturally, to be her eyes when needed, but they also learned that she was perfectly capable of managing without them. One day, when Ben was 8 and Bonnie was 6, a man from town came to the ranch to see Blake. He was starting a new business venture and wanted Blake to invest. Beatrice sat in on the meeting, listening carefully as the man laid out his proposal. When he finished, Blake looked at Beatrice. "What do you think?" The man looked surprised that Blake was asking his blind wife's opinion on a business matter, but he said nothing. Beatrice had been tracking numbers in her head as the man spoke. "I think the projected returns are optimistic," she said carefully. "The initial investment is significant, and the timeline for seeing profits is ambitious. We would be putting a substantial portion of our savings at risk with no guarantee of return. I would recommend against it." The man sputtered slightly. "Mrs. Garrett, I assure you this is a sound investment." "Perhaps," Beatrice said, "but it is also a risky one and we have children to think about. Our priority is stability, not speculation." Blake nodded, trusting her judgment completely. "I am afraid we are going to pass, but I appreciate you thinking of us." After the man left, Blake pulled Beatrice into his arms. "You saved us from making a bad decision," he said. "Your instincts are always right about these things." "We are partners," Beatrice said simply. "Your work is as important as mine. We each bring different strengths to our marriage, to our family, to this ranch." In 1888, when Ben was 10 and Bonnie was 8, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. This third pregnancy was unexpected, and Beatrice worried about being too old for another child. She was 31 now, not ancient but not young either, and she felt more tired than she had with her previous pregnancies. Blake was overjoyed at the news, but he was also protective, insisting that Beatrice take it easy, that she let him handle more of the household tasks. Beatrice protested but eventually gave in, recognizing that her body was not bouncing back from this pregnancy as easily as it had from the previous ones. Their second son was born in March of 1889, a healthy baby boy they named Henry. Ben and Bonnie were old enough now to be real helpers, and they took to their roles as big siblings with enthusiasm. Ben would hold Henry carefully while Beatrice prepared dinner, and Bonnie would sing to him when he fussed. "You have built a beautiful family, Mrs. Sullivan said when she came to visit after Henry's birth. She was older now, her hair gone completely gray, but her affection for Beatrice had never wavered. 3 healthy children, a successful ranch, a marriage that everyone in Cherry Creek admires. You have proven everyone wrong, Beatrice. We have proven them wrong, Beatrice corrected. Blake and I together. Blake was 35 now, his dark hair starting to show threads of silver, his face lined from years of outdoor work. But to Beatrice, whose hands traced his face every day, he was as handsome as ever. Their love had only grown deeper with time, strengthened by the life they had built together, the challenges they had overcome, the family they had created. On their 7th wedding anniversary, Blake took Beatrice for a walk away from the house, leaving the children in the care of one of the ranch hands. They walked to a hill overlooking the ranch, where Blake described the view to her in detail. "You can see the whole ranch from here," he said. The house, the barn, the pastures with the cattle grazing. The mountains in the distance, snow-capped even now in spring. The sky is that particular blue you can only get in Nevada, deep and endless. It is beautiful, Beatrice. Everything we have built is beautiful. "Tell me more," Beatrice said, leaning against him, content. "Ben is down by the corral working with one of the horses. Bonnie is sitting on the porch, probably reading. I can see smoke coming from the chimney, which means Sarah is getting dinner started." Sarah was the young woman they had hired to help with the household and the children. "Henry is probably napping if we are lucky." Beatrice smiled. "It is a good life, is it not?" "It is the best life," Blake agreed. "You know what I was thinking about today? That first day I met you in the general store in Cherry Creek. The way you held yourself, proud and independent despite how everyone treated you. I knew right then that you were special, that you were different from anyone I had ever met." "I was terrified that day," Beatrice admitted. "I had just heard Mrs. Henderson talking about how no man would ever want me, how I was destined to be alone. And then you walked into my life and changed everything." "You changed everything for me too," Blake said. "I had been alone for so long I had forgotten what it felt like to belong somewhere to someone. You gave me a home, Beatrice. You gave me a purpose. You gave me a family." "We gave each other those things," Beatrice said. "That is what love is, Blake. It is not one person saving another. It is two people choosing to build something together." "I see enough for two," Blake said, quoting his own words from so long ago. "I meant that when I said it, but I understand it differently now. It is not about me seeing for you. It is about us seeing together, about combining our strengths to create something neither of us could have built alone." "I love you," Beatrice said simply. "I have loved you since that first day, and I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," Blake replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Always." As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper. Blake expanded the operation, buying more land, increasing the herd. Beatrice's mending business had evolved into something more, a small clothing repair and alteration service that brought in steady additional income. Together, they had built not just a ranch but a legacy. Ben grew into a strong, capable young man who shared his father's talent with horses and cattle. At 16, he was already doing the work of a man, and Blake trusted him with more and more responsibility. Bonnie, at 14, had her mother's head for numbers and was helping Beatrice with the account books. Henry, at 7, was still young but showed promise of combining his siblings' talents. The town of Cherry Creek had changed over the years too. The railroad had come through in 1890, bringing new people and new opportunities. The population had grown, and with it, attitudes had begun to shift. Beatrice was no longer the pitied blind girl. She was Mrs. Garrett, respected rancher's wife, successful businesswoman in her own right, mother of 3. She had proven through her actions that blindness was not an insurmountable obstacle, and in doing so, she had changed how people thought about disability. One day in 1896, a young blind woman arrived in Cherry Creek with her family. She was 18, nervous and uncertain, and her parents were clearly worried about her future. Someone in town directed them to the Garrett ranch, suggesting they talk to Beatrice. The woman's name was Emma, and she sat in Beatrice's kitchen while Beatrice made tea, moving confidently around her own space. "How do you do it?" Emma asked, her voice small and scared. "How do you manage everything?" "Everyone back home told me I would never be able to have a normal life, that I would be a burden forever. But you have. You have everything." Beatrice set a cup of tea in front of Emma, finding her position by the sound of her breathing. "I do not have everything," she said gently. "I have what I have built, what my husband and I have built together. And it was not easy, Emma. There were days I wanted to give up, days I believed what everyone said about me. But I had people who believed in me, and eventually I learned to believe in myself." "But how?" Emma asked desperately. "By refusing to let my blindness define me," Beatrice said. "By finding ways to adapt, to do things differently but still do them. By accepting help when I needed it but not letting others do everything for me. By surrounding myself with people who saw me as capable rather than broken." She reached across the table and found Emma's hand. "You are not a burden, Emma. You are a person with challenges, yes, but also with strengths and abilities. You have to figure out what those are and how to use them. And you have to find people who will support you without smothering you, who will believe in you even when you struggle to believe in yourself." Emma's parents, listening from the doorway, had tears in their eyes. Over the following weeks, Emma visited often, and Beatrice took her under her wing, teaching her the techniques she had developed over the years, showing her that a full life was possible. Blake helped too, offering practical advice and treating Emma with the same matter-of-fact respect he had always shown Beatrice. By the time Emma's family left Cherry Creek 6 months later, heading to California, Emma was a changed young woman. She carried herself differently, with more confidence, more hope. And she carried with her Beatrice's example, proof that being blind did not mean being limited. "You have become a teacher," Blake told Beatrice after Emma left. "You are changing lives." "I am just sharing what I learned," Beatrice said. "What you taught me, Blake, that I am more than my blindness, that I am capable, that I am worthy of love and respect." In 1898, Ben married a young woman from Cherry Creek named Sarah Winters. She was a kind, practical girl who ran the local mercantile with her father, and she and Ben were well suited. The wedding was a joyous occasion, and Blake stood beside his son, proud beyond measure, while Beatrice sat in the front row, listening to the vows with tears streaming down her face. "Our baby is grown," she whispered to Blake later that night. "He learned from the best," Blake replied, holding her close. "He learned what a real marriage looks like from watching us." Ben and Sarah built a house on the ranch, and within a year, Beatrice and Blake were grandparents. Their grandson, James, was a squalling, red-faced infant who Beatrice adored instantly. She held him with the same confident care she had held her own babies, and she marveled at how the cycle continued, how love multiplied rather than divided. Bonnie showed no signs of wanting to marry anytime soon. At 18, she was more interested in the ranch and the horses than in young men, and Beatrice and Blake supported her independence. "She will find someone when she is ready," Beatrice said, "or maybe she will not. Either way, she has a place here, a purpose, a life she values." Henry, at 11, was showing signs of his father's wanderlust. He talked constantly about seeing the world, about traveling beyond Cherry Creek, and Blake understood that impulse well. "When you are 18, if you still want to go, I will not stop you," Blake told him. "But I hope you will always know that you have a home here, a family that loves you." As the new century approached, Beatrice was 43 years old and Blake was 46. They had been married for 16 years, had built a life together that exceeded anything either of them had imagined that day in the general store so long ago. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset, or rather, Blake watching it and describing it to Beatrice, Blake took her hand. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Marrying me, staying in Cherry Creek, building this life?" Beatrice turned to him, surprised. "Regret it? Blake, why would you even ask that?" "I think about how your life might have been different," Blake said. "If you had married someone from a wealthy family, someone who could have given you an easier life. If you had moved to a city where there were more resources for blind people, more opportunities. Instead, you married a cowboy and stayed in a tiny Nevada town, working hard every day of your life." "Blake Garrett," Beatrice said firmly, "you listen to me. I have never regretted a single day of our marriage, not one. Yes, we have worked hard. Yes, life has been challenging. But it has also been full of love and joy and meaning. You gave me something far more valuable than money or ease. You gave me respect. You gave me partnership. You saw me when no one else did, and you believed in me when I barely believed in myself. That is worth more than all the wealth in the world." She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the lines that time and work had carved into his skin. "I love you, Blake. I have loved you from the beginning, and I will love you to the end. This life, our life, is exactly what I wanted, even if I did not know it until I met you." Blake pulled her close, and they sat together as the Nevada sky darkened and stars began to appear, the same stars that had witnessed their meeting, their marriage, the building of their life together. "I see enough for two," Blake murmured, and Beatrice smiled against his shoulder. "We see together," she corrected softly. "Always together." The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and constancy in equal measure. Ben and Sarah had 3 more children, filling the ranch with the sound of grandchildren's laughter. Bonnie eventually did marry, at 25, to a traveling veterinarian who settled in Cherry Creek and worked with the ranches in the area. They had 2 children and built a house near the main ranch. Henry left at 18 to see the world as he had always planned, but he returned 2 years later, declaring that there was no place like home. He brought with him a wife from Denver, a school teacher named Margaret, and they settled on the ranch as well. The ranch grew and prospered, eventually becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. Beatrice's role in its success was well known and widely acknowledged. She had developed systems for record-keeping and financial management that other ranches began to copy, and she was occasionally consulted by neighboring ranchers on business matters. Blake's hair turned fully silver, and his movements slowed slightly, but he still rose before dawn every day to work the ranch he loved. Beatrice's hands grew gnarled with arthritis, but she still managed the account books, still took in the occasional mending work, still ran her household with quiet competence. They had been married for 30 years when Nevada finally became a state where women could vote in all elections. Beatrice, at 55, cast her first vote with pride, Blake standing beside her, and when they walked out of the voting location, Blake said, "About time the world recognized that women like you have just as much right to a say as anyone else." Their 35th anniversary came in 1917, and their family gathered to celebrate. Ben was 34 now, with 4 children of his own. Bonnie was 32, with 2 children. Henry was 28, with 1 child and another on the way. The ranch house was full of family. 3 generations gathered to honor the couple who had started it all. Blake, at 63, was still strong and healthy, still worked the ranch every day. Beatrice, at 60, was still sharp-minded and capable, still the heart of their family. They sat together at the head of the table, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and Beatrice felt such overwhelming gratitude for the life they had built. "Tell us the story," one of the grandchildren begged. "Tell us how you and Grandma met." Blake laughed. "You have heard that story 100 times. But we like it," another grandchild insisted. "Tell it again." So Blake told it, about the day he walked into the general store in Cherry Creek and saw a proud, independent woman being treated like she was helpless. About carrying her parcels home, about the church social, about falling in love with a woman who saw the world differently but saw it just as clearly as anyone else. And then Grandpa said, "I see enough for two," Bonnie added, smiling at her parents. "Actually," Beatrice said, "what your grandfather taught me is that we see enough together. That is the real lesson. It is not about one person compensating for another's weakness. It is about two people combining their strengths to create something neither could have built alone." Blake reached for her hand, and she laced her fingers through his. These two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built an impossible life together, who had proven that love was stronger than limitation, that partnership was more powerful than pity. As the evening wore on, and the family celebration continued, Blake and Beatrice slipped away to the porch, as they had done countless times over the years. They sat in their rocking chairs, holding hands, listening to the sounds of their family inside, the grandchildren laughing, their own children talking and joking. "Did you ever imagine this?" Beatrice asked. "That first day when you carried my parcels home, did you imagine it would lead to all of this?" "No," Blake admitted. "I just knew I wanted to see you again. I knew there was something special about you, something that made me want to stop drifting and stay in one place. But I could not have imagined how rich our life would become, how much joy we would find together." "Neither could I," Beatrice said. "I thought I was destined to be alone, to be the pitied blind girl that no one would wed. And then you saw me, really saw me, and everything changed." "We changed each other," Blake said. "That is what love does. It transforms us, makes us better, stronger, more complete." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Beatrice said, "Blake, I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever the future brings, I have no regrets. My life with you has been everything I could have hoped for and more. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose, and most of all, you gave me love. Real, honest, lasting love." "Beatrice," Blake said, his voice thick with emotion, "you have been my greatest adventure, my truest friend, my partner in everything. I would not change a single moment of our life together." They rocked gently in their chairs. Two people who had defied expectations, who had built a legacy of love and family and success. Behind them, through the open door, they could hear their family, the children and grandchildren they had brought into the world, the life they had created through sheer determination and unwavering devotion to each other. In the years that followed, Blake and Beatrice gradually stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch, handing over more responsibility to their children. Ben took over as primary manager, with Bonnie handling many of the financial matters and Henry managing the cattle operations. The ranch continued to prosper under their care, carrying forward the legacy their parents had built. Blake was 70 when his health began to fail. It started with a persistent cough that would not go away, and despite Beatrice's urging, he refused to slow down until he simply had no choice. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and ordered complete rest. Beatrice tended him with the same devotion he had shown her for more than 40 years. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand, talking to him, reminding him of all the moments they had shared. She told him about the day they met, about their wedding, about the births of their children, about every triumph and challenge they had overcome together. "I am not done yet," Blake told her one afternoon, his voice weak but determined. We have got more years together, Beatrice. I am not leaving you. I know, Beatrice said, though her heart was heavy with fear. You are too stubborn to leave me. You promised me a lifetime, Blake Garrett, and I am holding you to that promise. Blake did recover, though it took months and he was never quite as strong as he had been before. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. They celebrated Beatrice's 65th birthday together and their 40th wedding anniversary and Blake's 71st birthday. They were old now, these two who had been young and uncertain and hopeful so many years ago. Their bodies bore the marks of time and hard work, but their love had only grown deeper, richer, more profound. They knew each other completely, could communicate with a touch or a word, had built a partnership so strong that nothing could shake it. On a warm summer evening in 1922, when Blake was 72 and Beatrice was 65, they sat together on their porch once more, surrounded by family. All three of their children were there with their spouses and children. 13 grandchildren in total, ranging from infants to young adults, filled the ranch house and yard with noise and laughter. "Look at what we built," Blake said softly to Beatrice, describing the scene before them. "Ben is teaching little James how to throw a rope. Bonnie's daughter Catherine is sitting under the tree reading, just like her mother used to. Henry's boys are racing around the yard, driving everyone crazy but making everyone laugh. Our children are happy, our grandchildren are healthy, and the ranch is more successful than it has ever been." "Tell me about the sky," Beatrice requested, as she had done thousands of times over the years. "The sky is streaked with orange and pink," Blake said, his voice warm with love. "The sun is setting over the mountains, painting everything in golden light. There are a few clouds, just wisps of white against the blue. It is beautiful, Beatrice. Everything is beautiful." "You have been my eyes for 40 years, Beatrice said softly. "You have shown me the world in ways I never could have imagined. You have been my partner, my love, my everything." "And you have been my home," Blake replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "You gave me a reason to stop wandering, a reason to build something lasting. You showed me what love really means." As the sun set over the Nevada landscape, casting long shadows across the ranch they had built together, Blake and Beatrice Garrett sat hand in hand, their love story a testament to the power of seeing past limitations, of believing in each other, of choosing love even when the world said it was impossible. The town had pitied the blind girl no one would wed, but that lonely cowboy had seen what others missed. He had seen strength and capability, intelligence and courage, a woman worth knowing and worth loving. And together, they had built a life that proved love could conquer any obstacle, that partnership could overcome any challenge, that two people who truly saw each other could create something beautiful and lasting. Their story became legend in Cherry Creek, passed down through generations as an example of true love, of determination, of refusing to let others define your worth. Beatrice Vaughn, the blind girl no one thought would marry, had not only married but had built an empire of family and love and success. And Blake Garrett, the lonely cowboy who had said, "I see enough for two," had found his home and his purpose in the arms of a woman who taught him that seeing was about so much more than sight. They had 3 more years together, Blake and Beatrice, 3 years of quiet contentment surrounded by family, 3 years of sitting on their porch and watching, or listening to the sunset, 3 years of holding hands and remembering and being grateful for every moment they had been given. When Blake passed away in his sleep in the spring of 1925, he was 75 years old, and he died the way he had lived his later years, with Beatrice's hand in his. She woke that morning to find him gone, and though her heart broke with grief, she also felt profound gratitude for the 43 years they had shared. Beatrice lived another 8 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still managing some of the ranch's financial matters, still telling stories about the cowboy who had seen past her blindness to the woman underneath. She spoke of him often, keeping his memory alive, making sure their grandchildren and great-grandchildren knew about the man who had changed her life and proven that love could overcome any obstacle. She died in 1933 at the age of 76, peacefully in her sleep, and the whole town of Cherry Creek mourned the passing of a woman who had shown them all what courage and determination looked like. She was buried beside Blake on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together, under the endless Nevada sky. Their legacy lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that still bore the Garrett name, in the changed attitudes about disability that Beatrice's life had helped foster. But most of all, their legacy lived on in the story of their love, a story that proved that the most important kind of seeing has nothing to do with eyes and everything to do with heart. The town had pitied the blind girl no one would wed, but that lonely cowboy had said, "I see enough for two." And together they had built a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of seeing someone for who they truly are and choosing to walk beside them through every challenge, every joy, every moment of life. They had proven that love is not about perfect circumstances or easy choices, but about two people who decide to see the world together, combining their strengths, supporting each other's weaknesses, and building something that neither could have created alone. And so their story ended, but also continued, in the lives they had touched, the family they had created, the legacy of love they had left behind. Blake and Beatrice Garrett had shown Cherry Creek, Nevada, and anyone who heard their story what it meant to truly see someone, to truly love someone, to truly build a life together against all odds. They had taken what the world saw as limitation and transformed it into strength, had taken pity and transformed it into respect, had taken loneliness and transformed it into love. They had seen enough together, for a lifetime and beyond.